and it is gentle, it is friendly, it is informative. He begins by calling Moses by his name. And then he tells him, I'm the God of your father Abraham, your father Isaac, and Jacob. I'm aware of the situation of my people in Egypt. And I want to bring them out of that country and take them back to the land I promised to their fathers. And I'm appointing you a leader of that liberation. Moses must have been taken aback. Look at the friendliness of God, who enters into his life gently as one who was always in that life. As a God of history, as a God of his people, as a God of his family. Maybe Moses was not as familiar with God as God seemed to be familiar with him. And because of that established background of God's involvement in the life of the people of Moses, he wasn't going to say no to the call to be the liberator of his people. And just before he left the scene of the burning bush, he asked him, now that I'm going there to my people, if I tell them that the God of their fathers has sent me to them to liberate them from Egypt, and they ask me what is his name is, what will I tell them? And maybe the question we need to raise in this Mass is, how well do I know God? And how much can I say about God? I can say a lot about the Catholic Church. I know a lot about the sacraments that we confer. And I have a very good history of all the parishes where I have served and my experiences. I've interacted with the servant of God. He ordained me. His Grace Archbishop Digi Mwana Nzeki came. He was the ordinary of this diocese. I've interacted with Cardinal John Jue, and now we are in the reign of Archbishop Philip Anyoro, and we relate. And I can say a lot about them, just as they can say a lot about me. I can tell people many things about you. But how much can I say about God? And the Psalm provides for us what each of us should be able to say about God. Remember, the Psalms took their final shape after the Israelites returned from Babylonian captivity. They rebuilt the temple, and they would find their way to the temple. And what we have from the psalmist are qualities of God that are a product of the community's incremental awareness of the plurality of qualities of God in the way he has dealt with them, because he is a God of history. And because we cannot say a lot about God, what we are called to do is to ask ourselves, how much incrementally aware have we become in our lives from the way God has interacted with us about the fact that He is compassionate and gracious? It is the experience of an individual's life with God. Looking at our lives critically and looking at your life in an appraisal manner, can you see you have come to experience God as compassionate and gracious? And how much have we allowed this to grow in your system and in my system of beliefs and attitudes? In the way you think, in the way you feel, and in the way you act. Because there is a foundation on which we are sharers of these qualities. He created us in His image and likeness. We've come from Him. Therefore, if He is gracious and compassionate, if He feels for the sufferings of others, and if He gets bothered to the point of wanting to liberate people from their suffering, how much do I share in that? And is my sharing in His compassion and graciousness greater now that I'm an adult than it was when I was young? Because God is experienceable in His dealings with us. We do not go to look for God in churches. We cannot wait for others to digest who God is for us. If we do, the Shakahola type pastors will give us an image of God. The prosperity gospel pastors will sell us an image of God. It may have nothing to do with the God of Isaac, the God of Abraham, the God of Jacob, and now the God of Moses. It is this incremental awareness. If He is slow to anger, and we cannot understand how slow to anger He is if we have not dealt with the subject of personal sins fully. That He has let us escape with so much sin. And surprisingly, even these, when they are going to steal, they pray to God to save them and to protect them so that they are not caught or killed. And you cannot understand. And therefore, one can easily mad with another over something that people don't have to be mad about. If you haven't dealt with the subject of awareness of the slowness of God to anger, why your wife should upset you over something small and you sleep back to back, and there is no communication in that family, then you have not experienced God, and your awareness of His true nature is not growing. It is not maturing. As children, if we have not internalized the fact that He has shared His fatherhood with us through our parents, we cannot respect them and be gentle with them. And this is where our life that is God-like should be. It is not our life as Christians and church-goers. This is where our life should be. He makes known his ways to his people. He has spelled to Moses in very clear terms that he has an agenda for his people who are suffering in Egypt. That we cannot find good leaders in government and in church. Is it because we have no men and women like Moses? Can we get to a point where somebody is truly called and feels truly called by God to be a liberator of his people? And Professor Lorenzi Joroge, he's written a very good book on Catholicism in Kenya. It has beyond a century of endeavor. Nobody has had one being called by God. He forgives sins and he heals. He forgives and he heals. Because with forgiveness comes healing. And we are called to deal with our awareness of these good qualities of God in our lives, in which we can participate because God has created us in his image and likeness, and every seventh day of the week, 52 days in a year, we have an opportunity to listen to the word of God and to try and explain it to ourselves so that we can see how this word applies. And then, if we do not espouse these qualities, and if we do not strive to espouse these qualities, then who is our God? Who is your God? Who is my God? And who is your Redeemer? He has always shared these qualities with the generations past, present, and future. And St. Paul reminded the Christians of Corinth that many benefited from supernatural food. Even the rock that Moses struck and water came out of it. But not all pleased God. Having benefited from God in the way we have benefited, can he say of you and me what he said of Jesus, that he is my beloved son? I am well pleased with him. Because it is God who has to place that mark on you. It is not your priests, it is not you, our Christians. It is God who has to place that assessment on each one of us. And then, because not many pleased God with their lives, many of them died in the wilderness. They did not cross over. How many have crossed over and maybe are not where God is? Yet the opportunity is there. And in his time, people are very quick to point out bad news, just like they do. So they told him, you know that emperor, that he slaughtered some people in a synagogue where they had gone to offer their sacrifices. Have you heard? You know, it would be so bad if something happened and all of us perished now, starting with me. And imagine, why couldn't God just let them finish Mass and then take them one by one away from that church? Why did it have to happen? You know, when I was reflecting on this, I thought about that accident that happened at Mega. The 11-seater in the truck, and all the passengers perished. Then Jesus reminded them that alikuwa rada. He was also aware that there is a tower that had fallen over people and they had died. And you know, the assumption here is that those who die in unfortunate circumstances deserve it. Somehow they merited. Because we are not aware of the domination of sin. Sin dominates. Sin dominates. So we need to be aware of two things here. That the dominion of sin has held people captive. And sometimes we even sin unconsciously. And there is also the suffering of the innocent. The innocent also suffer. So let us be very slow to apportion blame. Evil has spread to the extent and the depth that it has because many are captured by sin. Had sin just captured a few, the many who are not in the dominion, in the kingdom of sin, would easily liberate the rest of them. So this is a journey in which we have to walk very slowly, deepen our awareness of the qualities of God, and struggle to manifest them out in our lives. There is a psalm that reminds us that it's good to live convinced that we will find the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. That as we walk and march forward in the coming week, to be convinced that we will encounter the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. For you and me, from this Mass, this is the question. Can I be a portion of the goodness of God in the land of the living in the coming week, in his multiplicity of good qualities? He is compassionate and gracious. He is slow to anger and rich in mercy. He makes known his ways. He makes known his ways to people. He forgives, heals, and redeems. Can I just be a small portion, amount of the goodness that the Lord is, that God is in the land of the living in the coming week? Your question, my question, and a subject of meditation in the next 2 minutes.